The Agores by Frye. I think we might have a problem, so I'm writing this in the event that the unfathomable happens, and this way perhaps someone might fathom what happened. I suspect my chaperone at least would like to know where I went. I'm sure she came back and wondered why I wasn't there. If I don't make it back, for whatever reason, please give her this in case she comes looking for me. Tell her everything is fine and that I'm sorry about the paper towels, but I had to leave in a hurry. She was away on a business trip. About 6 months ago, she got a new promotion at her job and started traveling a lot. But she also got a big raise, so according to her, it was worth it. They put her in charge of the whole entire region, not just some of it. And this time, it was for a whole entire week she was gone. The longest trip she had gone on up to that point, I think. Maybe she's been on longer ones since then, I don't know. I can't say I was too excited about it, her going away for that long. But she said with the dingbats I'd be okay. There's 11 of them. They live with us. Some of them sleep upstairs and some of them sleep down in the basement. A couple of them sleep in my chaperone's room. Once in a while, on bad nights I guess, she lets me stay in her room too. But we lay down in opposite ways, my head to her feet and her feet to my head. I always laugh the next day and tell her how much she snores. I think she's always felt bad about the whole thing, like somehow it was all her fault, even though it wasn't. All this pretty much began about 6 months after I moved in. At first I stayed in the room at the end of the hallway. She let me choose which one I wanted. There's 3 of them. Well, 2 that are available, that is. There's the one that's directly across from her room, which I picked on the first night. It's the smaller of the 2, but has the better bed. It's one of those that are really high off the ground, and it has a bunch of pillows on it and a big quilt. The other room is bigger, but the bed situation isn't nearly as appealing. It's just a couch with a pull-out bed, and when you do pull it out, it takes up the whole entire room. After a few weeks, my chaperone told me that she thought I'd be better off in that one. I told her that I liked having all those pillows, though, but then she said we could get more pillows for the pull-out bed. When I said that I really liked how the bed was high off the ground, that's when she said she wanted that room to be a formal guest room, and not just a tenant one. I asked her who she was planning on having over as a guest. She didn't tell me. I don't think there was one. I accidentally one day caught the stove on fire. Technically it wasn't even a fire, but she kept calling it that. It was dinner time and I was making pasta and the water boiled over the pot. The big rule in the kitchen was that you never left the stove unattended. I didn't think I was gone that long. But I did, and the next thing I know, I hear this loud sizzling sound. So I run back around the corner and there's all this steam and fire blazing up from the stove. Then she comes in and starts yelling and gets the fire extinguisher out. She didn't have to use it though. We ended up just calling for a pizza that night. I didn't use the stove for a very long time. Now, she and I have talked about this, and I didn't tell her at first, because when she asked me why I wasn't watching the stove, I just said that I had to sneeze and didn't want to do that in the kitchen. But the truth was, I was looking out the window. I had seen something outside. Something was hiding behind one of the bushes out in the backyard, and it was moving. But eventually I did tell her that that night was when I started seeing them, the Agores. And I had to tell her because they were everywhere outside the house. I can't tell you exactly what they look like, not for the lack of being able to, but because my hands tremble in such a way that I find it difficult to write when I think about them too much. I will say this. they are small. They're about 8 or 9 inches tall, and they have eyes and teeth. I have heard them talk. Their voices are tiny, and when they say something, it sounds like they're gargling water. Their language is foreign, and whatever they say is never nice. Like I said, they were everywhere except for inside the house. So I just didn't go outside. I couldn't. Believe me, they'd have gotten me if I did. They're really fast. I stayed inside the house for 4 years. I know that sounds like a long time, but it's a really nice house. Again, I feel like my chaperone thinks it's all her fault. And like I said, I didn't say anything to her about it at first. Whatever that thing was out in the bushes, I never saw what it was. I thought maybe it was a bird or something. I never really thought any more about it. And then, of course, the big stove fire happened, and I got preoccupied with that more than anything. And maybe it had been a bird. But knowing what I know now, I don't think it was. I do remember the first time, though, that I saw one for sure. It was a few days after the whole stove fire thing, and I went outside to get a package that got delivered. The delivery guy always dropped the packages off on the front porch. My chaperone liked to sit out there whenever the weather was nice. I always told her it wasn't a good idea, but she said she'd be all right. She has a big yard. Her house is about 5 miles outside of town, and it's on a big hill. She, or we, I guess, have neighbors, but you can't see them because they're far away and there's lots of trees. My chaperone never talked to them, and always told me to not talk to them either. At the end of the driveway, which is at the bottom of the hill, there's a paved road that takes you into town. The hill is really steep. Her backyard had a maze of bushes, and she'd tell me what it was like going through it. I always liked hearing her talk about that. She said it was amazing, and we'd both laugh. Then one time she said that all I had to do was just go outside, and I could walk around in the maze too. Of course I didn't. But on this particular day, there must have been a new delivery guy because whoever it was, they dropped the package off in the driveway by the trash cans, and I almost didn't see it. Normally you'd open the door and there'd be the package, but this time was different. So I walked over there, and that's when I saw one, an Agore. It was about midway up the hill. I stopped. I wasn't sure if it saw me, but then it opened its mouth and showed me its fangs. They're long and really pointy. Then it stamped its feet and made that gargling sound. Again, this is how they talk. But I didn't know that at the time. And I never know what they say. Sometimes they get hissy and make these awful screeching sounds. I think that's when they're really mad or something. Then I saw another one at the bottom of the hill, at the end of the driveway. I don't know if I said this already or not, but they have 2 legs and their feet are really big. Instead of normal hands, they have pinchers that look like black lobster claws. I don't want to talk about that anymore, though. At first, I was simply just curious. I wasn't entirely sure of what it was I was seeing. They were still pretty far off, maybe like 50 feet away at this point. So I kept walking over to get the package, and I saw the second one run up the hill to join the other. It did occur to me that maybe these were our neighbor's pets. They did sort of look like something like a guinea pig or a porcupine, but then again, what kind of porcupine guinea pig thing has pinchers? Either way, I smiled and waved at them. But that's when I didn't know how not so nice they are. I got the package and took it back inside. They just watched me. I set the box on the counter like I always did, and when my chaperone came home from work, she thanked me for doing that. I told her I didn't get a chance to feed the dingbats, but she said that was okay. I didn't tell her about what I saw, though. The next day I saw them again, when I went to get something out of my car. This time I went out the garage door. Back then I'd worry about one of the dingbats getting out, so I'd always shut it behind me no matter what. I was looking through my glove box, and when I shut the car door, I heard something. I looked over and they were there again. The same two from the day before. But down at the bottom of the hill, I saw 3 more coming up the driveway. They were talking to each other, but I didn't know what they were saying. I just went back in the house. 2 days later, I saw them again when I went out to fill the bird feeder. I saw the first 2, plus the other 3, and then a small band of them steadily advancing up the hill. I ran to the garage and quickly shut the door. The next day, I counted 20 of them in the yard, and then another 20 the day after that. They just kept coming. Within 2 weeks, there were hundreds of them, thousands. Each day I watched, through the living room window, as more and more of them marched up the hill. They were everywhere, and this is when I told all this to my chaperone. She went over to the window, peeling the curtain back just enough to see. I had insisted we keep these shut, and looked for a long time. Then, she asked if I was hungry. I said I was, and she made us dinner. I never have liked her cooking, but that evening I wanted her to stay in the kitchen with me. She made teriyaki chicken, and I remember it tasting rubbery. I asked her what we were going to do about all the Agores outside. She asked what Agores were, and I said they were the things outside. Then she told me that since we had dingbats in the house, the dingbats would keep us safe. Then she asked one of the dingbats if they would keep us safe, and the dingbat said nothing, which, of course, I pointed out. But my chaperone assured me they would. So I said, good, and then went downstairs to the basement. A few of the dingbats were there on the couch, and one stayed with me while I watched TV. I looked down and wondered out loud if they really would keep us safe. But I guess my chaperone was right, because the Agores never came into the house. They would come up to the front porch, look in the windows, and some would even get on the roof. I could hear them walking around up there at night. Since the house was made of brick, my chaperone was quite confident they could not find their way through the walls. I was worried about them chewing through the roof, though, since it was wood. But my chaperone reminded me that even if they could, that the dingbats would keep them away from us. One day, she said that I should try going back outside and that maybe the Agores were nice. When I told her they were not nice, she said I couldn't just stay home all the time. I saw her point, and so I said I would try. She said she'd be right behind me, and so I walked out onto the porch. There were thousands of them in the yard, and when they saw me, they all started yelling, and then they charged towards me. I quickly shut the door and told my chaperone that going outside was not a good idea. They were pounding on the house, on the walls, the roof, the doors, the windows, and shrieking like rodents. And then all the dingbats started wailing, as if this were somehow a response to the noise outside. Then the Agores got quiet. That's when I knew my chaperone was right. The dingbats were going to keep us safe. I looked out the window and I saw that a lot of the Agores had backed away from the house. There were still lots of them out there, though. But I didn't go outside anymore after that. That was 4 years ago. I did have to quit my job, but it was okay because I hated that place anyways. My chaperone said I could just stay there with her as long as I was thankful. That's all. I just had to be thankful. She is big and has red hair, and her breath always smells like ranch dressing. And all she wanted me to do was to be thankful. The basement is the best part of the house. It always feels like the perfect temperature, no matter what time of year it is. There's a large screen TV and she has subscriptions to all the movie channels, so there's always something new to watch. I always fell asleep on the couches because they were so comfortable, though she preferred that I sleep in the bedroom because that's what bedrooms are for. My chaperone bought all my food for me, or she'd have something delivered. I always got nervous when we'd order pizza because I was worried about the Agores getting in the house. She always told me that if they did, the dingbats would protect us. If there was ever anything that required me to leave the house, she was always kind to handle it for me. Since she took care of pretty much everything for me, I didn't have a lot of bills. And if there was anything else I needed, she'd order it for me. All I had to do was be thankful. Sometimes I'd make dinner for us just to show how thankful I was. She never seemed to have a problem going outside, and the Agores have always left her alone. I've watched them through the living room window plenty of times, and they never did anything whenever she'd go out there. She'd be out working in the garden, and there'd be hundreds of them all around her. But they didn't do anything. Yet if I were to open the door, they would certainly all rush at me. Who knows what they might have done if they were able to ever breach the front door. Each one is small, but I shudder to think what thousands of them working together might do. We only had 11 dingbats. Sometimes it was hard explaining all this to other people, and so we stopped trying. Nobody really ever came over, though. My chaperone didn't have many friends, and had just gotten divorced about a year before I moved in. She had a brother who lived far away, and stayed with us for a weekend one time. On occasion, she'd go into town to see some old lady who knitted sweaters. One time she made one for me, but I never wore it. It made me itch. But it was nice of her, and my chaperone told me to be thankful. I won't say our arrangement never worked, but things changed about 9 months ago when, out of nowhere, she got mad at me and said that since I was always at home, I should be doing more around the house. When I asked her to provide a few examples of what doing more around the house meant, she said things like washing the dishes and vacuuming. And she said I never took the trash out. I told her my reason for that was because the trash cans were outside in the driveway and the Agores were out there. Then a couple months or so after that, she brought up the tissue boxes. I had been expecting that. See, my chaperone kept boxes of tissues in each room of the house. Each room had at least one, and in some, like the living room, there'd be 2 or 3. This was rather convenient because whenever you needed a tissue, there'd be one right there. No matter where you were in the house, there'd always be a tissue nearby. The rule was that whoever picked the last tissue from the tissue box had to get a new one from the linen closet. Well, one day, I was in the basement and I took a tissue and saw that it was the last one in the box. I didn't feel like going upstairs, so I stuffed the tissue back in the box and grabbed one from another box on the other side of the basement. Then, eventually, I got to the last tissue in that box and I put it back like I did the other one. So I had to start using the tissues from upstairs. Whenever I'd get to the last one, I'd just put it back. I did this with the 3 tissue boxes in the living room, then the 2 in the kitchen, and the 1 in the hall bathroom, and the 1 in the laundry room, and then the 1 in the guest room. And so one morning, about 6 months ago, she confronts me about all this. It was a Saturday morning, and I was in the kitchen having coffee and watching the Agores out in the backyard. They were everywhere, in the trees, on the back porch, in the bushes, in the garden, just everywhere. And she sets this box of tissues down next to me on the counter and says that we have to talk. When I asked her what she needed to talk to me about, she pulls out the last tissue in the box and leaves it there. Then she pulls the one from the box by the fridge and then goes in the living room and brings back the 3 from there. She pulled all those out too. Then she proceeds to tell me how she went around the whole house and found that all the tissue boxes had only a single tissue left in them. She asked me why I didn't get new boxes from the linen closet like you're supposed to. I didn't know why. Then she went and put tissue boxes throughout the whole house and told me to, from then on, always remember to replace the box when one runs out. Then things really changed when she met some guy online. He had just gotten divorced and they soon began dating. She seemed pretty happy with him. He was always nice to me, but I could tell he wished I wasn't there. Over the course of a few weeks, my chaperone fell in love with him and told me they were talking about getting married and moving in together. Then this guy suddenly gets some job offer out west and my chaperone starts getting all these ideas about selling the house and moving out west with him. I asked her, "What about the dingbats?" She didn't say anything. One night, a few months ago, she comes home from work and was really mad that I had left one of my socks on the floor. I told her that one of the dingbats and I had been playing fetch. Then the next thing I know, she's yelling at me about how I never pick up after myself, and how I didn't keep the bathroom clean enough, and how I was always using too much laundry detergent. And then she starts talking about how she was tired of always stopping at the grocery store or having to pick up takeout for me. She said that if she moved out west and got married, I couldn't go with her. She did say she'd take the dingbats, and that they'd be okay. I asked her what I was supposed to do with all the Agores outside if I didn't have the dingbats around, and she said then I would have to learn how to deal with them myself, because they weren't my dingbats anyway. And she said if I couldn't take care of a dozen tissue boxes, then how could I possibly take care of a dozen dingbats? She had a good point. And so I went downstairs to the basement. Suddenly the house felt different. It didn't want me there anymore. My chaperone didn't want me there anymore, and it even felt like the dingbats didn't want me there anymore. And for the first time in 4 years, I didn't want to be there. I thought about my car. It was parked in the driveway, but I hadn't driven it in such a long time. Again, 4 years. My chaperone ensured it stayed up to date with tags and decals, and she would drive it on occasion just to let it run some. She said that her ex-husband had told her you weren't supposed to just leave cars sitting for too long without driving them. So I was thankful that she did that. I remembered her saying that the gas tank was full. My plan was to get in and just drive. Where I would go wasn't so much as important as it was to just get out of there. I didn't want to stay in a place where I wasn't wanted. When she told me a few nights later that she was going out of town on business for a week, I figured that'd be the time to leave, and so I did. I don't know why I felt like I had to do it when she wasn't there, but I didn't want to have to tell her that I was going to try to go outside. It felt embarrassing. I don't know why. It was just easier this way. After she left for her trip, I hung around for a couple more days, mainly to make sure the dingbats would have enough food and water to last them until she got back, but also because it took me that long to work up the nerve to finally leave. When the time came, I packed some clothes, as much as I could fit in my backpack, and made sure I had my wallet. My plan was to go out the garage door. From there, it would only be a short sprint to my car. I was sure that if I moved fast enough, the Agores wouldn't get me. I decided to leave at night. That way maybe they wouldn't see me as well as they maybe would in the daylight. Please note, that was just a notion I had. At the time, I had no idea whatsoever as to whether or not they can see better in the daytime than at night. Knowing what I know now, they evidently can see just as well at night. I made sure all the kitchen appliances were off. I unplugged everything just in case. I checked the stove twice and the coffee pot 4 times. I made sure the dishwasher was off, and then I went downstairs to make sure the laundry machines weren't on, and then I said goodbye to the dingbats. I thanked them for always keeping me safe from the Agores. They didn't seem to be bothered by the fact I was leaving, which only further validated my deep-seated conviction that it was time to go. I went out the kitchen door to the garage and locked it behind me, and put the key in the coffee can like you're supposed to, and then double-checked my pockets to make sure I had my car keys and my wallet. I put my backpack on and then went over to the garage door. I reviewed the plan over in my head a few times, took a deep breath, and then pressed the button to open the door. The gears above my head began cranking, and as soon as there was enough clearance, I ran really fast to where my car was. It didn't take them long to notice me, and they started yelling and hissing. I couldn't see them too well since it was dark out, but I could hear hundreds of them barreling across the yard. As some of them got closer, I swatted at them with my backpack, knocking them back into each other. They went down like dominoes, rather easily, I might add, but they kept coming. Right when it felt like I was getting somewhere with all this, a small platoon of them flanked me, and I was suddenly getting swarmed. I swung away, though, but one caught its fangs in the straps of my backpack, and I had to let go of it. That's why I've been wearing the same clothes all this time. I got my keys and unlocked the car door, quickly closing it shut as several Agores smashed into it. Suddenly, dozens of them were jumping on my car. How they didn't dent it, I don't know. I started the engine. At first it wouldn't come on, which scared me, but then it did, and got turned around, backing over the ones behind me in the process. Then I put the car in drive and rolled quickly down the hill. I was driving over them, and some had flung themselves on top of the hood and were clawing at the windshield. Others were on top of the car, looking over it, upside down, at me through the window. I could hear them scampering all around. They never stopped coming, so I finally floored it and plowed through them all the way out the driveway. At one point, it felt like there were enough of them to stop me, but I got to the mailbox and turned right and sped up the road. They tried chasing me, but I was too fast, and they were quickly out of sight. The ones hanging on fell off, and by the time I got on the interstate, where I could go really fast, it looked like I had most certainly lost them. I drove all through the night and into the early morning, and by then I was already a state away. It felt odd to be outside and driving after 4 years of not, and the only thing I said out loud the entire time was when a song on the radio came on that I hadn't heard in a long time. By dawn, I had driven nearly 400 miles when the gas light came on. I needed gas. I knew I had enough money to keep the car going for a long time, but that wasn't the concern. The concern was getting out. It was the first time in 4 years that I had been anywhere outside of the house. Not to mention, here I was almost 400 miles away from that house. Most of the gas stations along the interstate were the 24-hour kind, so I stopped at one. I parked at the pump that was closest to the store. I ran in and handed the cashier $40 and told her to keep whatever change there was, and then I ran back out. There was no one around aside from a few trucks idling nearby. I was the only car. I began filling up and felt a slight trembling in the earth. At first I thought maybe it was one of the trucks, but there was this rumbling sound that got louder and louder. The sun was barely up, so it was hard to see, but far off in the distance, on the other side of the interstate, I saw something that looked like a huge shadow moving across a large field. Agores. They were catching up with me. I quickly put the gas nozzle thing back and jumped in the car and sped away. I saw swarms of them in my rearview mirror. They were fast, but my car could go faster, and so faster I went. Within a few minutes, I was able to get far enough away that I didn't see any behind me anymore. But I didn't slow down either. I didn't know how much further I could drive. While I had a full tank of gas, pretty much, I wasn't sure that I had another 400 miles in me, not after driving all night. The morning sun made me really sleepy, so I started looking for roadside motels, and that's how I wound up here at the Plainview Motor Inn, this place. I ran into the lobby and asked for a room. There was an olive-skinned man in a red shirt behind the curtain, and he was watching TV. This was the guy who used to work the night shift. I said that I needed a room, and he said that check-in wasn't until 2 p.m. I told him that I'd been up all night driving, and he didn't even care. So I ended up having to pay for 2 nights. Please forward a copy of this to whoever owns this place, because I really would like to talk to them about getting a refund for that. Luckily, there were 2 rooms left vacant, and I took one, number 5. I bought 2 bottled waters and a bag of nuts from the vending machine and quickly went to my room. I closed the curtains and laid down. I could hear a woman talking to someone in the room next door, but I couldn't tell what she was saying. And then the TV came on and the talking stopped. In the room on the other side of me, number 4, someone kept opening and closing the door, and it sounded like they were moving things around. Then everything stopped, and it was really quiet. And that's when I must have fallen asleep, because I can't remember anything after that. When I woke up, the clock on the stand said 4:37. I wasn't sure if this was the right time or not, but I felt like I had slept a long time. The room itself had a late afternoon hue to it, and so I got up, drew the curtains back, and when I did, I saw hundreds of Agores. They were grouped in battalions throughout the entire parking lot and as far as I could see on the hillside across the road. Somehow they had found me. They were all just standing out there. That's all they ever do. They just stand there waiting for me to step outside. At first I was afraid that they'd storm the room, so I put the big chair in front of the door to barricade it. I tried moving the dresser, but it wouldn't budge. They never tried coming in, though, and for a while this perplexed me. But then it occurred to me that the clothes I have on probably smell like the dingbats. They probably think that the dingbats are with me. I don't know this for sure. It's just a theory of mine. When I got up the next morning, I looked outside, and they were still out there. With my checkout time rapidly approaching, I called the guy at the front desk and told him that I couldn't leave the room because there were Agores outside. He asked me what Agores were, but his English was so broken that we couldn't understand each other that well, and the conversation ended with me booking another night. I told him, however, to please come to my room to get the money, and to also bring another bag of nuts and some water. He said he would, and within an hour he was knocking at my door. I looked out the window, and there he was, standing with this huge army of Agores behind him. He didn't seem to be bothered by this, and, just like with my chaperone, they didn't appear to be concerned with him either. I opened the door just enough to hand him 3 $20 bills in exchange for 2 bottles of water, a bag of nuts, and a receipt for my second night at the Plainview Motor Inn. On the 3rd day, I spoke with the guy at the front desk on the phone, and he suggested that I consider just paying the weekly rate, which would save money, if I wanted to stay any longer. So I did. I was beginning to feel quite acclimated with the room, and I had finally figured out how to work the remote for the TV. but then it got stuck on the Weather Channel for some reason, and so that's all I've been watching. On a side note, I'd like to mention how interesting the Weather Channel can be because you get to see what's happening with the weather in different parts of the country. For instance, it might be sunny outside here, but everybody to the north might be getting a lot of rain. It's just neat to think about, I think. I thought about my chaperone and how, by then, she had probably already gotten home from her trip. And if she had gotten home, then certainly she would have found the note I left her on the kitchen counter saying that I was gone. I did consider calling her just to let her know where I was, but then I realized that I didn't know her phone number. I hardly ever had to tell it to anybody. There was a sticker on the phone that had the number on it just in case I ever needed to. That made me sad. I was also really missing the dingbats. Things started looking up, though. I found a nearby pizza place that delivered, and on the third and fourth night, I ended up having breadsticks for dinner. When the next week came, I slipped another few $100s through the crack of the door, and the guy at the front desk advised me to check in for the whole month to get even more of a discounted rate per night. Of course, that made perfect sense from a financial standpoint, so I stayed. Then the first month went by. I ate pizza and subs on most nights, and between the pizza guy and the front desk guy, I maintained a rather ample supply of bottled water. But, of course, that all changed when that guy quit last month and you started working here, I guess. While I understand that my situation might be difficult for some to understand, I do wish that you could have been more hospitable like the last guy was. For instance, after the first couple days, I never had to ask for nuts from the vending machine. He would just bring them. And when I wanted to reimburse him, he wouldn't let me. Plus, he smiled more than you, and I think that if you're going to manage a motel, you should smile more when talking to your guests, especially your extended stay guests, like me. Still, albeit our differences, let me say in an official sense that I still stand by the satisfactory rating that I put down on the survey last week. Besides, whatever disputes we've had, if you even want to call it that, let us not deem them to be beyond mitigation. I consider such matters to be fairly minor in the scheme of things, so that's why I'm writing all this. I didn't mean to hang up the phone on you the other night. You're just trying to do your job, and you do seem like a nice person. Please let me clarify and explain the whole housekeeping issue with you. It's actually easier for me to do this in writing anyways. As you know, this entire time, I've only allowed the maid in twice. I know you were wondering about this, and I'm not sure what the last guy told you, but it's been my observation throughout my stay that your maids tend to leave the doors open while they're working. I've left many messages explaining why that practice is not acceptable, yet nobody seems to care. The one I let in last month said she understood my concerns, but her actions demonstrated otherwise. When I insisted that she move her cart in as quickly as possible, because I didn't want any Agores getting in my room, she said she would, but then she didn't. That's why I grabbed the cart like I did. You have to understand, though, her English is broken, so it's hard to tell her anything. She's a nice lady, but I highly question her attention to detail. And, again, when I tell you that you cannot just leave the door open, that means you cannot just leave the door open. The pizza guy gets it. Why can't everybody else? I also still don't see what the big deal is with me being in the room while she's cleaning. That doesn't make sense. Nevertheless, I suppose we'll have to agree to disagree on the entire matter. I'm fine with that, and I hope you will be too. Overall, I've enjoyed my stay here at the Plainview Motor Inn. The past 3 months have been, for the most part,
fairly pleasant, and I would not hesitate to recommend your place to other travelers. The only problem is that now I am down to my last $100, and I don't know what to do. It's not like it's a huge surprise or anything. This whole time I've been watching my savings dwindle away more and more. That's why I asked you last week if there was any way I could stay another month for free since I've been a good customer. Though your response was a bit less than hospitable, I completely understand your position on that. It appears that the inevitable day that I've been dreading is finally here. Rest assured, I will be leaving. I'm not sure where to go from here, though. At this point, my plan is to just sleep in my car. I don't think that the Agores can get me in there, but I am concerned that if they were to work together, that they might be able to break the windows. So, I've been thinking about that a lot for the past couple nights. Obviously, my other major concern is running out of money, as I mentioned. I've eaten quite well lately, so I know I can sustain for a few days at least on nuts and water. If I can ration my stash out, I'll use the rest of the cash for gas, which, according to my calculations, should get me pretty far. I can't say I haven't thought about just turning around and going back to my chaperone's house. I could do that. I'll tell her that I've learned a big lesson and that from now on I won't procrastinate on doing the dishes or replacing the tissue boxes when they're empty. I'll take my clothes out of the dryer and I won't leave any socks on the floor. I'll vacuum more and say thank you every day. I'll tell her that I can be more thankful than that guy she's been seeing and how she probably wouldn't like it out west. And she would tell me that I was right. I can see it now. I bet the dingbats would be happy that I came back. They've probably been wondering where I am. I could sit in my favorite couch down in the basement, and I could tell them about all the things I saw the time I drove 400 miles away, all by myself. I think they'd be proud of me. I really do. I could even leave tonight, actually. Like, right now. All I'd have to do is make sure the TV is off, turn the lights out, open the door, and run to my car. It's only a few parking spaces over from the one in the front of my room. That's not far. Just a quick sprint, really. I know I can get halfway to it before even the first Agore would see me. I know I can make it. I just have to run as fast as I can. And then I'll start the engine, take the exit to the interstate, and go back the way I came. I should be there by morning. And so, please accept this notice in lieu of a more conventional checkout. My circumstances will not allow for me to drop my key off at the front office as your policy here at the Plainview Motor Inn would have me do. Also, I would like to remind you that the toilet had evidently already been leaking prior to my arrival on the first day. We've already talked about this. And the remote needs new batteries. Other than that, I trust that you'll find everything to be in working order. I will gather used towels and linen and place them in the middle of the bed out of consideration for your cleaning staff. Please do excuse the pile of trash in the corner. I've been unable to dispose of it properly because, as you know, the dumpsters are outside. I will leave this $10 bill here for the extra trouble. Thank you for your hospitality. Signed, H.W., the guy in room 5.